Jaya Gurudev, Gurudev, Jaya Jaya Gurudev. Jaya Jaya Prabhupada, 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 Prabhupada. Jaya Kodanitai Maya Poshashi, Kodanitai Maya Poshashi. Kodanitai Jaya Maya Poshashi. Iskon Guru Vinda ki Jai, Srila Prabhupada ki Jai, Shishi Kodanitai Maya Poshashi ki Jai. Go Premanandi Haribo. Reading from Srila Prabhupada Lilamrita. Thank you. Keith was cooking in the kitchen, as usual, but today Swamiji was standing by the kitchen stove watching his pupil. Keith paused and looked up from his cooking. Swamiji, okay. Could I become your disciple? Yes, Swamiji replied. Why not? Your name will be Krishna Das. This simple exchange was the first request for this discipleship and Swamiji's first granting of initiation. But there was more to it than that. Swamiji announced that he would soon hold an initiation. What's initiation, Swamiji? One of the boys asked. And Swamiji said, I will tell you later. Today is the disappearance day of Jayananda Prabhu. And he was the great Prabhupada disciple. He was very enthusiastic about Rath Yatra. So I'll read. Jayananda Prabhu was one of the earliest disciples of Srila Prabhupada. He joined the Krishna consciousness movement in San Francisco in 1967. He was the first man to give Srila Prabhupada some contribution for printing his Bhagavad Gita. And he also drove Srila Prabhupada's car. He organized the first Rath Yatras in San Francisco, working very hard. He saw to everything from advertising the parade to building the Rath cart and organizing prasadam distribution. He is remembered very fondly by all as a kind, serious, thoughtful, and very hard-working devotee. He passed away in 1977. Srila Prabhupada wrote the following after Jayananda Prabhu's passing. Jayananda's death is glorious. It is very good that he had stated, what is the use of such a useless body? Better to give it up. He has left his body very wonderfully, and he has been transferred to Vaikuntha. Everyone should follow the example of Jayananda. I am very proud that I had such a nice disciple. If possible, Jayananda's picture should be hung in the Rath on Lord Jagannath in all of our temples. A day may be set aside for holding a festival in his honor, just as we do on the disappearance day of the other great Vaishnavas. Shri Jayananda Prabhu ki Jai. So we can do that today on Harinam. Oh yeah, do you want to?
Jayananda had gone down to Tijuana, Mexico, which is right over the border from San Diego, to get treatment for his cancer. And he actually started a little preaching program in the facility where he was staying, preaching and having little kirtans and readings from Bhagavad Gita. And Gunagraya Maharaj used to go down occasionally and bring him prasadam and things, visit him and whatever. And then one day he went down and Jayananda Prabhu said, just get me out of here. Just take me out of here. I don't want to stay here. Maharaj said, why? And he said, they won't let me preach anymore. They've stopped that. And Maharaj said, well, you need to stay here for your treatment. He said, no. He said, I'd rather be with the devotees and just suffer it out. So, and that's what he did.
Wow. Haribol. So you've met Jayananda Prabhu?
No.
Yes, a nice meditation today on Harinam is the mood of Jayananda Prabhu that he so much wanted to give everybody Krishna. And if he couldn't preach, then he didn't want to stay there. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So we're reading from the Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 6, Chapter 2. Apologies, it's not Maharaj. Should be Maharaj giving the class. But he didn't sleep so well last night. So this chapter is entitled Ajamil delivered by the Vishnu Dutas, and we're on text 42. Yahi Uparata Dis Tasman Ya Yupadrata Dis Tasman Adrashit Purushan Pura Adrakshit Purushan Pura Upalabyo Palabdan Prag Upalabyo Palandan Prag Bhavande Shirasa Dvija Bhavande Shirasa Dvija Yahi Uparatadis Tasman Adrakshit Purushan Pura Upalabyo Paladan Prag Bhavande Shirasa Dvija Yahi Upatatis Tasman Adrakshit Purushan Pura Upalabyo Palabdan Prag Bhavande Sirasa Dvija Upalabhis Tasman Adrakshit Purushan Pura Upalabhyo Palabdan Prag Bhavande Shirasa Dvija Tasman Adrakshit Pura Shirasa Dvija. Ladies, Yaheyo Parata Tasman Adrakshit Purusham Pura Upalabhyo Palabdam Prag Bhavande Shirasa Dvija Yarupalatatis Tasman Adrakshit Purusham Pura Palabdam Prag Bhavande Shirasa Dvija Yahi when Uparatadi his mind and intelligence were fixed. Tasman at that time, Adrakshit had seen Purushan, the persons, the order carriers of Lord Vishnu, Pura before him, Upalabhya getting, Upaladan who were gotten, Prag previously, Vavande offered obeisances, Shirasa by the head, Dvija the Brahmin. Translation: when his intelligence and mind were fixed upon the form of the Lord, the Brahmin Ajamil once again saw before him 4 celestial persons. He could understand that they were those he had seen previously, and thus he offered them his obeisances by bowing down before them. Responsively, please. When his intelligence and mind were fixed upon the form of the Lord, the Brahmin Ajamil once again saw before him 4 celestial persons. He could understand that they were those he had seen previously, and thus he offered them his obeisances by bowing down before them. Prabhupada, Srila Prabhupada ki jai. The Vishnu Dutas who had rescued Ajamil came before him again when his mind was firmly fixed upon the form of the Lord. The Vishnu Dutas had gone away for some time to give Ajamil a chance to become firmly fixed in meditation upon the Lord. Now that his devotion had matured, they returned to take him. Understanding that the same Vishnu Dutas had returned, Ajamil offered them his obeisances by bowing down before them. Om Jnana Timiranda Shagananjana Shalakaya Chakshuran Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhistam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swabhadantikam Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadha Shri Vasadi Gaura Bhaktarinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. So I'll read the translation again. When his intelligence and mind were fixed upon the form of the Lord, the Brahmin Ajamil once again saw before him 4 celestial persons. He could understand that they were those he had seen previously. He thus offered them his obeisances by bowing down before them. So this is just before Ajamil goes back to the spiritual world. And the same 4 Vishnu Dutas that he'd seen when he was being dragged off by the Yamadutas. And so now he knows his devotion must have matured, and he's ready to go back home, back to Godhead. And this is every devotee's aspiration, that he will finish up this lifetime, his devotional service. Although Ajamil was 88 years old, he managed to, however long he lived before he passed away, he managed in those few short years to perfect himself. So it's a good example of how we shouldn't become discouraged if we start devotional service late. Srila Prabhupada said, it's not how you run the race, it's how you finish the race that counts. Because you could be running it really good, and then just at the last minute you stop for read the newspaper and have a cigarette or something, and then you don't make it. So Ajamil, if you're prepared to be very serious and very focused, then in a very short time. So really the question is, what quality of devotional service do we want to render, and do we want to go back this lifetime? If we don't want to go back this lifetime, then it doesn't really matter. We can take our time. We can play around with the material energy. We can distract ourselves. But if we're thinking time's running out, I don't have much time left, I need to get serious. Of course, you may be thinking time is on my side. I've got plenty of time. I'll just cruise along right now. And when I'm 88, I'll start taking it a bit more seriously. But if you die tomorrow, then you're an old man today, as the saying goes. And no one knows, nobody gets up that morning, generally anyway, and decides, I think I'll die today. So generally we don't know when we're going to die. And so for that reason, we should live every day like it's our last. And they put a sign on the in the Bhakta program, I think it was in one of the temples in America, live today like it's your last, because one day it will be. So that's true, I suppose. So it shows the potency of devotional service. Really, it's just how well do we apply it. In fact, if you're ever on Twitter, Krishna Dharma puts these amazing quotes on, and he just put a really good one on. In fact, if I share this one with you, it will have such an effect that you will never be the same again for the rest of your life. So, are you prepared? He said, it's not whether God's on our side, it's whether we're on God's side. So that's all it is, really. Do you want to be with the program? Do you want to fit in with what Krishna's plan is? Because if you don't, it's still happening anyway. It's just up to you whether you want to be on his side or you don't, you know. In fact, he's always on our side. And isn't it amazing that, you know, it's not like, you know, here we have sometimes problems with staff and, you know, things are run on a shoestring sometimes, and there's not enough nurses to go around or enough hospital beds or enough doctors. But we see in the spiritual world, there's so much abundance that they can send 4 Vishnu Dutas down to take care of one of the jivas. And there's so many trillions of jivas. So Krishna is more than willing to accommodate and help us in every way that he can. So this is the, sometimes actually in Srila Prabhupada's books, he starts once upon a time. So this is the bit where, and they all lived happily ever after, because he went back to God. That's actually all these other happily ever afters aren't really that happily ever after, because eventually they grow old and die and have to come back, but maybe in a lower species. So this is the real lived happily ever after. Any questions or comments? I'll just read that again while you can formulate. When his intelligence and mind were fixed upon the form of the Lord, the Brahman Ajamil once again saw before him 4 celestial persons. He could understand that they were those he had seen previously, and thus he offered them his obeisances by bowing down before them. Yes, Javavasi Prabhu.
When we're trying to help someone who is apparently very close to death due to their physical condition, I may be aware that I need to help them become really serious, even more serious than I may be at the present time. So, how can I speak truthfully? Is there a danger of saying words which we don't have complete faith in ourselves? Is the potency there in saying what we understand to be true because of the situation is an emergency?
If I understood your question correctly, if someone is near death and we don't feel qualified to push them further than, if we're thinking they need to get more serious, but I'm not more serious myself, therefore who am I to try and get them or present the philosophy in such a way to try and inspire them to become more serious about practicing Krishna consciousness if I'm not doing it myself. So well, I wouldn't be here giving class if it was based upon being advanced and having to repeat instructions that I've fully realized myself. Most of us are a work in progress, and there's a gap between what we accept intellectually and what we implement emotionally. And we're trying to bridge the gap as quickly as we can. But if we're just real with the people when we're sharing their last few days or months or years of their life, however long it is, just as genuine as we can be, then that has an effect in itself by just being genuine and from the heart, not trying to pretend to be anything more than we are. And we're all trying to apply Krishna consciousness to the best level that we can, and it's never satisfactory anyway. So sometimes a person can feel reassured that they're amongst devotees that have been maybe practicing Krishna consciousness for a much longer time at a much more serious level than themselves, but they still feel themselves unworthy, and so that therefore they don't have to become discouraged, by those feelings of unworthiness. And it's an interesting story as a kind of side comment. There was a devotee who went to Brinda Kund, and there was a Baba there, Govinda Baba, and he'd heard that he was leaving his body. He was very sick, and he thought, I'll just help him for a week or two, and I'll get so much sukriti. And so Govinda Baba kept saying all the time that the only way back to the spiritual world is by the mercy of Brinda Devi. He was like, everything was Brinda Devi, only by the mercy of Brinda Devi. Brinda Devi escorts you into the spiritual world. She gives you your service, and she's in charge of all the paraphernalia. And so anyway, the Baba lived longer than he thought he was going to live. And it was like 2 or 3 months later, and he kept saying, Brinda Devi's mercy, Brinda Devi, you need to get Brinda Devi. So eventually he said, well, how do I, because he was thinking, well, I must be getting Brinda Devi's mercy because you're sold out to Brinda Devi and I'm serving you now in the last days of your life. And he said, he said, how do I get the mercy of Brinda Devi then? And he said, go to the West and preach Harinam Sankirtan. Which wasn't what he was expecting, actually, because I think he'd come from the West to get away from Harinam Sankirtan. He was trying to find and he said, well, I'll find a Baba in Brindakund and serve him, and then I can go back, So the Yuga Dharma is the Harinam Sankirtan, and so we are trying to ourselves perform that yogya, and we're trying to encourage as many others as possible, and wherever way they can. If they're very debilitated in their health, then maybe they can come along in a wheelchair or stand at the back and not do anything too exertive. But that's really what it is, how to encourage people to be involved in preaching the Harinam Sankirtan. And then what happens after that is between them and Krishna. Very, very hard for us to really assess whether the person will go back or not. And sometimes Krishna may just decide, And the cobbler didn't think he had a chance of going back, and the Brahmin thought he would be going back that lifetime. And as it turned out, the cobbler was going back that lifetime, and the Brahmin had to wait as many lifetimes as there were leaves on the banyan tree. You know that story. Any other questions or comments? Yes, John.
I've been thinking recently there, isn't it a case sometimes that you thoroughly have to understand that this isn't a good place? When you're out on a sunny day and you're maybe going up the street and the floors are out and everything like that, so it's a great place. But I was discussing it with Prabhupada Prana, and he says, no. He says, you've got to actually understand that it isn't actually a good place.
Yeah.
For the impetus for to say to you, get out. Now, it's fantastic here, having great fun and dancing with the devotees. It's magical.
Yeah.
And it's the best place to be. But I was thinking to myself, if I added up all these things that I've done, maybe being a bit puffed up with the books and that, I've been out in the books, will Krishna go like that through the pages and go, aye, he's done enough? Or their fasting days, or the amount of chanting, or the things you do. Sometimes you think, he'll add it up and go, he's in. Like getting the state pension. If you do 32 years, you're guaranteed your state pension. But if you understand it's no like that, and your attitude, does Krishna look at your attitude? Or how really much you love him?
Yeah, well, that's why the story of Ajamil is very encouraging, because he didn't have a very good track record. He had very bad. And because he had been a Brahmin and he'd done everything in knowledge, and his beautiful chaste wife, his parents, it was a really, really bad, really, really poor show, really bad track record. And then he went back. So, but not that we should think, oh, that's great, so I can just mess around and I'll be okay. I'll just call my kid around and it should be fine, But yet it's up to Krishna, and Krishna knows who he wants back and who he doesn't want back, and so we're praying for that shelter. Ainanda Tanus Kinkaram, please pick me up and place me as an atom at your lotus feet. And we're begging Krishna, somehow or other I've fallen into this ocean. Please pick me up and place me as an atom. And that's all we can do. Other than that, we don't know. We could become complacent or proud. So Krishna likes to keep his devotee in a situation where he's not affected by pride and complacency. So we tread carefully. Padam yadvi padam natesham. The material world is a dangerous place. And Prabhupada said, even if you're attracted to the twinkling rays of the rising sun, then you'll have to come back and take birth again. So that's to kind of help you realize, well, I'm only going to be able to do this by Krishna's mercy, by Radharani's mercy, by Lord Chaitanya's mercy, Namuda Radharani, Lord Nityananda's mercy, by my Guru's mercy. Do I stand any chance? That's why initiation is so important, because you're able to associate with somebody that's very close to Krishna, very dear to Krishna, very dear to Srila Prabhupada, and then if they accept you, then you've got a very good chance, because you've got friends in high places. And if you know somebody that's gone back to the spiritual world, like Jayananda Prabhu or like Mother Ratnaranjini, and you pray to them, then you can just imagine how potent that must be. Somebody there in the spiritual world hearing the prayers of somebody in the material world. It's going to be very, very, very powerful. Someone else had a question? Ashish.
Thank you, Prabhu, for the class. Question, Prabhu. So in this pastime, we do not see right there, Ajamil didn't take any initiation apparently, or didn't have a spiritual master. He just chanted the holy name of Krishna, and Vishnu Dutta came and back to Godhead. So is spiritual master then really required?
Generally, he is. Generally, it's a general principle. That's why we don't follow. We think it's really nice how powerful the holy name is, that without the initiation, the holy name was able to take. Of course, in one sense, the four Vishnu Duttas were at least his Shiksha Gurus. So he had them. They were showing him, this is what pure devotional service looks like. And that inspired him to follow in their footsteps. But it's more, the pastime is to emphasize how powerful taking to the holy name is. And at the same time, we should be aware that we need to do everything that we can to ensure, not that that means we can take risks, but that we should take initiation, we should follow the instructions strictly, and we should do everything very nicely without deviation, And then these pastimes, if you look at the way the pastimes are in the Srimad Bhagavatam, you have some pastimes that make it seem really easy, and some pastimes that make it seem really difficult. And our bhakti marg is somewhere in between the two extremes, so that you don't become overly complacent and you don't become overly discouraged. You just have to apply yourself and try the best that you can, associate nicely with the devotees. And by the grace of Guru and Garanga, then you'll go back this lifetime.
Hare Krishna Prabhu. This point that you make about that this could be, or tomorrow could be our last day, or today could be our last day. Could you make a small analysis of, what is it like, how devotee lives that last day? If it would be the last day, what would be the sadhana like? How devotee would be doing service, and what would be interactions with other devotees if it is your last day?
Well, we saw with Mother Ratnaranjini on her last day. She just started chanting and didn't stop chanting. Well, for a few days actually, she was chanting all the time. Because of her body was so sick, they had to bring her the water, and the water was like bubbling as she was drinking it, because she was still chanting. The holy name was just coming out all the time, So she just abandoned everything else and absorbed herself in Harinam. And I think you were saying that the only difference between a Bhajananandi and a Ghostananandi is that the Ghostananandi is a Bhajananandi that preaches. So he's fully absorbed in Harinam, and whenever he's not doing any preaching, immediately he's chanting that the holy name is there all the time, So that as death is coming, then it's especially at that time we have to be good. Not that we learn to chant like parrots, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. And then somebody comes in and squeezes our neck and we go, ah! And we go to, whatever that is. But it's when the neck, you're getting the hands around your neck. It's at that time, Hey Krishna. That's when you really have to. So we have to look. Are we chanting actually like that? That we're getting ready now to leave, and this is our shelter. This is where we're going to be going to. This whole portal into the spiritual realm is there by the chanting, and we're getting a chance right now to practice daily, and get to that point where when we're chanting, we're fully aware that our spiritual realm is there, and that we're going to be able to access it. Generally, there was one devotee actually. He got shot. I remember Krishna Maharaj was telling us the story. He was always messing around like anything, And there was some incident in America, and this devotee was in the firing line, and he's lying there, and he says, Maharaj, please don't let me die. Don't let me die. I promise I'll be so serious. I'll be so serious. Please, don't let me die. Don't let me. Anyway, he didn't die, and he got well. But as soon as he got well, he started messing around again. So they call that type of renunciation graveyard renunciation, isn't it? They all go to the funeral and everyone's feeling really, really bad and thinking, wow, death, I'm going to have to get serious about my chanting now, And then after the next day, they're all messing around again as usual, So I was just reading this morning, actually, one of the austerities of the mind is gravity. And, if it's your last day, generally you're quite grave, aren't you? When you're told, I thought I had a fatal thing a few years ago, and they said, I was asking, well, how long have I got, It's quite grave, quite gloomy. So, but I had to be positive and enthusiastic in the face of death, not that we become discouraged or overwhelmed by it, but that we keep full of pluck and wit, and keep our chin up. Look on the sunny side. Always look on the bright side of life, and always look on the bright side of death. Because the bright side of death is, I'm going home. This is it, at last. So, we all have to maintain a certain level of gravity, but not an overwhelmingly grave disposition that makes us become Dr. Gloom, story that in Nepal, the bus went over with devotees in it. And as the bus went over to certain death, the devotee was on the other side listening, and you could hear, Haribol! So, and I don't know if you've ever been on this in Nepal, but they're, because I was thinking, well, it must be okay. They do it every day, 100 times. And I looked over, and there was a couple of buses. I thought, it wasn't okay for them, And he's just going. They've got blocks now, but they didn't have blocks, and he's just like speeding along, And there was one woman on a bus as well. I wasn't there at the time. She tapped the driver. She said, "Do you think you could chill out a bit, because it's looking a bit dangerous, And he said, "It's okay. I believe in reincarnation." And she said, "I know, but I don't." So she was very scared. Any last questions? We're going to try and finish a bit sharp, yeah.
Hare Krishna, thank you, Prabhu, for the class. I've got a question about, you quoted Prabhupada saying that we shouldn't be attracted to the rays of the morning sunlight.
Yeah.
So my question is there a danger in prematurely renouncing like the material world? Or shall we just, automatically give everything up and then kind of be left in this middle stage before we gain love of Krishna? Or do we just try to gain the love of Krishna and things?
Well, there's no danger of prematurely giving up the material world, because you either give it up or you don't. You could say there's a danger of pretending to prematurely give up the material world. That's usually what it is. Oh, Maya. And really you're like so attracted, but you're just trying to prematurely pretend that you're so anatana vritti is you become aware that you are really attached to the material world, that you do like the twinkling sun and you do like the little flowers and the butterflies, like John was saying, and you do think it could be quite nice here if I got a little place by the seaside and chanted Hare Krishna and helped old ladies across the road. I'd probably be okay, things would be fine, So anatana vritti is you become aware now, well, that's actually not a good thing, that's an unwanted thing, and that's obstructing my full absorption in Krishna and the spiritual world. I'm being distracted. And Krishna says in the seed verse of the Riritam Yapatiyata Yatpatiyata Chatmani, he says, whatever appears to be of any value, if it is without connection to me, is my illusory energy. Know it to be my reflection that appears to be in darkness. And what it means by appears to be in darkness is it appears to be disconnected from me. But if you can just illuminate everything, you'll see that everything is actually connected to Krishna, the beautiful flower, the beautiful lady, the beautiful song from the bird, the beautiful sun that's rising. If you see them as connected to Krishna, then there's no problem, you see. The problem is we see it as that reflection which appears to be in darkness. That seems to be, that seems separate from Krishna. That must be for me to enjoy. Then it's not for Krishna to enjoy. He's not around anyway. Okay, so I guess I'm the man for the job then. I'll go over and enjoy it instead. Okay. So that's where the problems lies, you see. And we can't prematurely be detached, but we can become aware that this is due to a symptom of darkness and ignorance. And then Tesham Evanukampatam, by Krishna's special mercy, he will jnana dipena, he with the shining lamp of knowledge, he'll destroy the darkness born of ignorance. He'll illuminate and show us, well, actually, that's my flower. And actually, the way the sun is shining right now in the clouds and making those beautiful colors, that's actually me, that's my handiwork, So really, we're looking at the material creation and we're seeing a beautiful painting, and all we have to do is try and find the signature. It's been signed by Krishna. So we just need to see that and acknowledge Krishna is such a beautiful artist. And then when we see the painting, we'll have more. We have appreciation for the painting, but we have a special respect and admiration for the painter of the painting, isn't it? It's like if you could meet, and like everyone likes to go and see Mona Lisa, right? The Mona Lisa, they're all, oh wow, it's so far up. But imagine if they said, well, actually, we've just resuscitated Leonardo da Vinci. Actually, we had him on ice for 600 years, and we've just thawed him out. Would you like to meet him? Everyone would be like, oh my God, I get to meet the person that painted Mona Lisa. Oh my goodness me. Everyone would be like amazed, wouldn't they? So why just settle for messing around with the painting, Try and find the artist. Realize that was painted by a beautiful, genius, all-loving artist who is cognizant, swarat, completely independent personality that does exist, and you have a relationship with him. That would be more interesting, wouldn't it? Iskon Guru Vrinda ki, Srila Prabhupada ki, Shri Harinam Sankirtan ki, Gaura Premanandi, Hari Bol.
Jai.
All of you, ki jai.
Jai.